Sadako Saudi. myPerspectives. Grade 6.
Hachiko, The True Story of a Loyal Dog, by Pamela S. Turner. Historical fiction. About the author. Pamela S. Turner, born in 1957, grew up in Southern California. She has always been interested in writing, and has said that the very first thing she remembers wanting to be was a children's author. Turner has lived all over the world. While living in Japan, she heard the story of Hachiko. When she returned to the United States, she wrote her first book, Hachiko, The True Story of a Loyal Dog. Since then, she has written many other books for children and has won numerous awards for her writing.
Concept vocabulary.
Timidly. Adverb. In a shy or fearful way. Cautiously.
People peer timidly from their windows to assess the damage.
Anxiously. Adverb. In a worried, uneasy manner. Nervously.
She paced from room to room anxiously.
Patiently. Adverb. Bearing annoyance, hardship, or pain calmly and without complaint or anger.
She listened patiently as I told the story.
Thoughtfully. Adverb. Showing careful consideration or attention.
He gazed thoughtfully into the distance.
Silently. Adverb. Without noise.
We all ate silently.
Page 119.
When I was 6 years old, my family moved to a little house in Tokyo near the Shibuya train station. At first, the trains frightened me, but after a while, I grew to enjoy their power and the furious noises they made. One day I begged Mama to take me to meet Papa as he came home on the afternoon train. She laughed and said, "Kintaro, you have become big and brave, just like a samurai." Together we walked to the station. Mama and I had stopped near the station entrance when I noticed the dog. He was sitting quietly, all alone, by a newspaper stand. He had thick, cream-colored fur, small pointed ears, and a broad bushy tail that curved up over his back. I wondered if the dog was a stray, but he was wearing a nice leather harness and looked healthy and strong. His brown eyes were fixed on the station entrance. Just then, Papa appeared. He was chatting with an older man. The dog bounded over to the man, his entire body wiggling and quivering with delight. His eyes shone, and his mouth curled up into something that looked, to me, just like a smile. "Ah, Kintaro! You see, Dr. Ueno, you are not the only one who has someone to welcome him," said Papa. He introduced us to the older man. "Dr. Ueno works with me at Tokyo Imperial University." "What is your dog's name?" I asked timidly. The dog was beautiful, but his sharp face reminded me of a wolf's. I grabbed Mama's kimono and stepped behind her, just in case. "Don't be afraid," said Dr. Ueno kindly. "This is Hachiko. He is big, but still a puppy. He walks me to the station every morning and waits for me to come home every afternoon. I think Hachiko stores up all his joy all day long and then lets it all out at once." Hachiko stood wagging his tail next to Dr. Ueno. I reached to touch him, and he bounced forward and sniffed my face. I yelped and jumped back behind Mama. They all laughed. "Oh, Kentaro, don't worry. He just wants to get to know you," said Dr. Ueno. "Dogs can tell a lot about people just by smelling them. Why, Hachiko probably knows what you ate for lunch." From that day on, I went to the train station almost every afternoon. But I no longer went to see the trains. I went to see Hachiko.
Page 120.
He was always there, waiting near the newspaper stand. I often saved a morsel from my lunch and hid it in one of my pockets. Hachiko would sniff me all over, wagging his tail, until he found a sticky bit of fish or soybean cake. Then he would nudge me with his nose, as if to say, "Give me my prize." When it was cold, I would bury my face in the thick ruff of creamy fur around his neck. One day in May, I was waiting at the station with Hachiko. The moment I saw Papa, I knew something was wrong. He was alone, and he walked hunched over, staring sadly at the gray pavement under his feet. "What's the matter, Papa?" I asked him anxiously, standing with one hand on Hachiko's broad head. He sighed. "Kentaro, let's go home." Hachiko's bright brown eyes followed us as we walked away, but he stayed behind, waiting for Dr. Ueno. When we got home, Papa told us that Dr. Ueno had died that morning at the university. I was stunned. "But what will happen to Hachiko?" I asked, blinking hard to keep the tears back. "What will he do?" The next day, I went back to check on Hachiko, but he was not there. Papa told me that Hachiko had been taken several miles away to live with some of Dr. Ueno's relatives. "But I'll never see him again," I cried. "Why can't he live with us?" "We don't have room for a dog," protested Papa. And Hachiko really belongs to Dr. Ueno's relatives, now that Dr. Ueno is dead. Hachiko is better off having a home than sitting in a train station. But Hachiko had other ideas. A few days later, he was back at Shibuya Station, patiently waiting, his brown eyes fixed on the entrance. Hachiko had run back to his old home, and from there to Shibuya Station. Mama and Papa let me take food and water to Hachiko every day. Other people at the station took an interest in Hachiko. Men and women who rode Papa and Dr. Ueno's train stopped by to scratch his ears and say a few kind words. One day I saw an old man filling Hachiko's water bowl as Hachiko licked his hand. The old man's hair was streaked with gray, and he was stooped, as if he had spent most of his life bent over the ground. But his eyes were as sharp and bright as Hachiko's. "Are you young Kentaro?" the old man asked. I nodded. "I am Mr. Kobayashi. I was Dr. Ueno's gardener. Dr. Ueno told me that you and Hachiko often wait for the afternoon train together." "Do you still take care of the house where Dr. Ueno lived?" I asked. "Yes," said Mr. Kobayashi. "Hachiko comes back to the house every night to sleep on the porch. But in the morning, he walks to the station just like he did with Dr. Ueno. When the last train leaves the station, he returns home." We were both silent. Then I asked, "Do you think Hachiko
Page 121.
Hachiko knows that Dr. Ueno died. Mr. Kobayashi said thoughtfully, "I don't know, Kintaro. Perhaps he still hopes that Dr. Ueno will return someday. Or perhaps he knows Dr. Ueno is dead, but he waits at the station to honor his master's memory." As the years passed and Hachiko got older, he became very stiff and could barely walk to Shibuya Station, but still he went every day. People began collecting money to build a statue of Hachiko at the station. Papa, Mama, and I all gave money, and we were very happy when the statue was placed next to the spot where Hachiko had waited for so many years. One chilly morning, I woke to the sound of Mama crying. "What's wrong?" I asked as I stumbled into the kitchen. Papa sat silently at the table, and Mama turned her tear-stained face to me. "Hachiko died last night at Shibuya Station," she choked. "Still waiting for Dr. Ueno." Later that day, we all went to the station. To our great surprise, Hachiko's spot near the newspaper stand was covered in flowers placed there by his many friends. Old Mr. Kobayashi was there. He shuffled over to me and put a hand on my shoulder. "Hachiko didn't come back to the house last night," he said quietly. "I walked to the station and found him. I think his spirit is with Dr. Ueno's, don't you?" "Yes," I whispered. The big bronze statue of Hachiko is a very famous meeting place. Shibuya Station is enormous now, and hundreds of thousands of people travel through it every day. People always say to each other, "Let's meet at Hachiko." Today, Hachiko is a place where friends and family long separated come together again.